Let's start with our first question. Today, being 1st of January, Ram is considering to purchase an outstanding corporate bond having face value of Rs 1000 that was issued on 1st January 2017, which has annual coupon rate of 9.5% and original maturity of 11 years, maturing on 31st December 2027. Since the bond was issued, interest rate have been on downside. See, here we need to remember a concept, recall a concept. Whenever the market expectations for interest rate goes on upper side, my security, which is already issued on a predetermined rate, its valuation will go down. So it will trade on a discount. And whenever the market interest rate expectation goes on lower side, my securities will be overperforming and the valuation of my security will be more. So it will trade on premium. Okay, so as market interest rates have been on downside, our securities are trading at a premium of 125 rupees. Okay, so whatever is the my coupon rate was 9.5% here, and so the market interest rate prevailing would be anywhere lower than 9.5%. All right, determine the prevailing interest rate. That is what the question is asking us. Okay, so come, let's look into the solution. We'll take the base of 6% and 8% as stated into the question. All right, so we have our face value, we have coupon rate. All right, we have current market price, which is premium plus my face value. All right, so it would be my cash outflow at initial year whenever I will. So our concept was whenever my security is overperforming, means coupon rate of my security is less than market rate. Alright, so my valuation will go down, and whenever market interest rate is lower than my security rate, my security will be overperforming and my valuation will go up. Then for calculating interest rate prevailing into market, we can take the base of cash flow estimates. So my cash flow for 1 to 8 year will be interest inflow, which will be 9.5% of 1000, it's 95 rupees, and on 9th year I'll get a face value of redemption 1000 plus 95 interest of that year. So when we discount it at 6% and 8% respectively, our present value will come to 1238.12 and 1093.39. I have solved it already, so to save the time, which will be then reduced by my initial cash outflow at its current market price. Alright, so my NPV would come around 112.37 and negative 32.36. So this denotes that my prevailing market interest rate would be somewhere above 6% and below 8%. As at 8% it is negative. Alright, so to calculate exact rate, we will take the base of formula lower interest rate plus the difference of NPV on lower interest rate divided by difference of NPV on lower interest rate plus upper interest rate into difference between the two base taken, that is 6% and 8%, 2%. So my prevailing interest rate in market will come to around 7.55%. Alright, now let's look into second question. It is also on similar grounds. The following data is available for NNTC bonds. Face value was rupees 1000, coupon rate was 7.5%, means 75 rupees would be my annual cash inflow. Years to maturity are 8 years are remaining. Okay, and market interest rate is 8%. So here also we can apply my concept. Market interest rate is 8%, my security is giving 7.5%, means market expectation are higher than my security valuation, what my security is offering. So my security would be trading at a discount. Alright, so first question is determine current market price itself. Okay, and duration and volatility, that we will do simultaneously. So we know that my security would be having lower valuation. Alright, so come, let's look. We'll take again cash flow as the base. So for first 7 years, my cash inflow would be 75 rupees, that is 7.5%. On 8th year, I'll get redemption value also along with interest. So my current market value when discounted at 8% and market interest will come to around 970.97. So concept again is revised that when as market expectation is higher than coupon rate, security will be trading at a discount. So it is trading at a discount of almost around 29 rupees. Right, then second is duration of bond. For duration of bond, you will have to prepare whole cash flow, like what we took over here was 1 to 7 years at the stretch, but here we will have to take individually. Alright, so we will just discount it at 8% initially. So the above table would be sufficed over here. Then we will take the proportion of present values. So total would be 1 and this would be proportion, means 69.45 divided by 970.97, it will come to 0.71071. Alright, so then we will multiply proportion with time, this is year. Right, so it will come around 6.272. So it is my duration of bond. And what is my volatility of bond? Duration divided by yield. So what is duration? 6.275 divided by 1 plus 8% yield. So my volatility of bond will come 5.81. And secondly, what the question is asking us is the expected market price if there is a decrease in yield by 50 basis points. So as my initial difference between my market expectations and my bond was 0.5 basis point, it is 7.5% versus 8% was market expectation. So my security was trading at discount. So if now market expectation is also brought to 7.5%, then my securities valuation would be my face value, that is 1000 rupees. That's so simple. Yeah, but if you want to go by formula, like that means we need to use volatility rate. All right, so what we need to do is original interest price was 970.97. okay, the wheel plus 970.97, that is old price plus old price into change in yield multiplied by volatility. So we'll just apply this formula and we'll get 999.18. It is due to some rounding of differences, otherwise it will come to exact 1000, because both my yield means market expectation is 7.5% and our coupon rate is also 7.5%. So my face value will equal to my current market price. Correct concept. Okay, let's get to now our third question, which is from portfolio management. All right. So a study by mutual fund has revealed that following data in respect of three securities: security A, B, C, standard deviation is given, correlation with market index is given. All right. Then what we need to calculate is first, what is the sensitivity of return of each stock with respect to return of market. So means in short they are asking us about beta over here. Alright, so come, let's look into the solution. First we will note down that what is the standard deviation given and what is the correlation. Market return was 15%. Alright, so first sensitivity formula is standard deviation of security divided by standard deviation of market into correlation of security with market. Right, so for beta calculation of A, what we will do is standard deviation of A was, which is 20 divided by standard deviation of market, which is 15, into correlation of A with market, so it is 0.6. so we will get the beta of A. Similarly we can get beta of B and C also. Then in second part, what the question is asking us, what are the covariances among various stocks. So covariance matrix we will have to prepare. So what is the formula for covariance? It is beta of security A into beta of security B multiplied by variance of market. Okay, so first of all we'll prepare a matrix ABC. ABC means each security inter covariance we need to figure it out. So first A and B will look. So what is the beta of A? 0.80 multiplied by beta of B multiplied by standard deviation of market square, that is variance square. It is variance, sorry. So similarly we get here, similarly we will get these four. And what is the covariance of A to A? That would be return square. So return is 20% into 20%, it is 400, 324 and 144 respectively. Then third, what the question is asking us about is, what would the risk of portfolio consisting all the three stocks equally? Right. So for risk, what we will do, three stocks formula. So to calculate that risk, what is the formula? That is standard deviation of A into weight of A square plus standard deviation of B into weight of B square plus standard deviation of C into weight of C square plus 2 into covariance of A with B into weight of A into weight of B, 2 into covariance of A and C into weight of A into weight of C plus 2 into covariance of B and C into weight of B into weight of C. When we will put this formulas, we will get the answer to be 200.24. Then what the question is asking is, what is the beta of the portfolio consisting all three stocks equally? So what we can do is beta of A into weight of A plus beta of B into weight of B plus beta of C into weight of C. So we will get beta of portfolio. What is total systematic and unsystematic risk of the portfolio? Right, so systematic risk, we have the formula beta of portfolio square into variance. So we have standard deviation of market as 15, so its square would be our variance, that is 15%, into beta of portfolio we calculated in 4 to be 0.8467. So we will get the systematic risk of the portfolio. Now what is unsystematic risk? That is total risk minus systematic risk. So total risk we calculated in 3 above, which was 200.24, and systematic risk we calculated in here 161.0. So unsystematic risk will be 38.941, that is difference between the both. Alright, now let's come to our fourth question, which is also from portfolio management. Mr. Abhishek is interested in investing 2 lakh rupees, which he is considering 3 alternatives. So Mr. Abhishek is having 2 lakh rupees, which he can either invest into mutual fund X, mutual fund Y or a mix of mutual fund X and Y in the proportion of 60% is to 40%. Average returns of mutual fund X is 15%, mutual fund Y is 14%, risk-free return in market is 10%, and market interest rate is 12%. Covariance matrix we are having over here already given. So what the question is asking us is first variance of return from mutual fund X, Y and market return. Alright, so variance of return we can already figure it out from covariance matrix. What is variance of return of X is this, Y is this, and mix will be this, market return would be. As market returns are not specifically mentioned, we will take mix to be denoting market expectations. Alright, so come. So first we are already given into the question, first answer is. Then second was portfolio return, beta, portfolio variance and portfolio standard deviation. So for that we will use the formula for calculating first beta. So beta's formula is covariance upon variance. It is standard deviation square. So beta of X would be 3.37, which is covariance, divided by standard deviation of market, which is 3.1. So we'll get beta of X, we'll get beta of Y. Then beta of portfolio would be beta of X into weight of X plus beta of Y into weight of Y. So we got portfolio beta. Then what would be the variance of portfolio? That is weight of X into into standard deviation of X whole square plus weight of Y into standard deviation of Y whole square plus 2 into covariance of X to Y and weight of X into weight of Y. So it will come to around 4.472. Then what is the standard deviation? It is variance under root of variance. So it will come to around 2.115. Right, then what is expected return, systematic risk and unsystematic risk? So expected return is, almost we know the formula of as per CAPM, expected returns are always risk-free rate of return plus beta into market risk premium. Alright, so we'll use the same formula of CAPM over here. Expected return of portfolio will be risk-free rate of return 10% plus beta into market rate risk premium. So it would be 12.03%. Alright, so in similar lines we'll calculate for X and Y also. Then what is systematic risk? Systematic risk formula is beta into standard deviation whole square. So standard deviation whole square we already know for market, it is variance, so it is 3.1, and beta square for individual securities. So we will get systematic returns for X, for Y and for portfolio, that is mix of X and Y. Then unsystematic risk equal to total risk minus systematic risk, as total risk is summation of systematic risk with unsystematic risk. So we have total risk over there, total risk already calculated in above as this. Alright, so what we will do is we will just subtract total risk, subtract systematic risk from total risk, so we will get our unsystematic risk. Okay, then in fourth what they calculate Sharpe ratio, Trainer's ratio, alpha of individual securities. So here what we need to remember is formulas for Sharpe ratio, for Trainer's ratio. So Sharpe ratio is what? The premium what the security is giving over risk-free rate of return, that is divided by standard deviation in Sharpe ratio, and that premium when divided by beta of the security, it gives us Trainer's ratio. Only this concept we need to remember, these two formulas. So when we will just put this inputs into the formula, we will get automatically Sharpe ratio, Trainer's ratio. And what is alpha? Alpha is the expected difference between what the securities return was given into the question as to expected return as calculated above in 3 above. So our alpha is 2.83%, for Y it is 2.19%, and for portfolio it is 2. Okay, so now let's come to our fifth question, which is from mutual funds. Okay, so there are two mutual funds, that is mutual fund D and mutual fund K. NAV as on 31st December 2019 we are given, that is 70.71 for mutual fund D and 62.50 for mutual fund K, and the ratio is also given, that consisting of first mutual fund D is consisting of 99% of equity and remaining in cash, and mutual fund K consists of 96% of equity and remaining in cash. So following information also given for them. Sharpe ratio is given, which is Sharpe ratio is the premium what the security is giving over standard deviation, and Trainer's ratio is premium what the security is giving over beta of the securities, and standard deviation also we have been given for individual securities. So there is no change in portfolio during the next month, means the securities which were consisting in each portfolio are the same. Then average cost is 3 per unit for the scheme for both mutual funds. So annual average cost we are having over here. So what we can get is per month cost from here. So it will be 3 divided by 12. This is 0.25 rupees per unit per month. If share market goes down by 5% within a month, calculate NAV after the month for the scheme of both the mutual funds. So what we need to calculate over here is that the market has gone down by 5% in the next month. So what will be the impact of that decrease in market on my securities? So come, let's take the base of these ratios given, as this is only the base we are having right now. So first we'll just recall the concept. The Sharpe ratio was what my security is giving premium over standard deviation, and Trainer's ratio was what my security is giving premium over beta. So we'll just note down first the facts of the question. NAV is given, equity portion is given, that is this was 99% of this and this was 96% of this, so remaining was cash percentage. So first what we can do is we can use Sharpe ratio. What is Sharpe ratio? Premium upon standard deviation. So standard deviation we are having, okay, Sharpe ratio we are having, so we will get the premium. What is the premium in both the securities? And first it will come to 22.50 and then second it will come to 16.50. Then using Trainer's ratio we can identify what is the beta. So we will just put the formula over here. Then we will get the beta to be 1.50 for mutual fund D, and for mutual fund K it would be 1.10. Then impact on equity. Now we know that if market is gone below by 1%, my mutual fund D's equity valuation would go down by 1.5% and 1.10% in mutual fund K. So what would be the impact on market on mutual fund D? It is beta into market impact. So market impact was 5% and beta was 1.5, or 7.5% impact in mutual fund D and 5.5% in mutual fund K. So what will be the valuation of equity? It would be 70 minus 7.5%. It is 6.4%. 64.75 rupees, and in mutual fund K it would be 56.70. Then cash at starting was 0.71 in mutual fund D, which would be reduced by 0.25. It is 1 month expenditure. So my closing NAV for mutual fund D would be 65.21, and closing NAV similarly for mutual fund K would be 58.95. Alright, let's look into the next question, which is from derivatives. The most interesting concepts are from derivatives itself in SFM. So come, let's look into the question. Mr. SG sold 5 4-month Nifty futures on 1st February 2020. So 1st February 4 months, so it will be Feb end, March end, April end and May end. So May expiry futures he has sold for 9 lakhs. How many futures he has sold? 5. Okay, index turned out to be 2100 at the end. So we need to calculate first the price of future contract on 1st February 2020. So what will be the price of future contract on first contract? See, what he received was 9 lakhs on selling. So 9 lakhs divided by 5. So our contract price was 1,80,000 per contract. Then second, what he is asking, approximately Nifty spot, ignore Sensex word over here, on 1st February we need to calculate if our risk-free rate of return is 9% and dividend yield is 6% prevailing into the market. So what is my the formula for calculating the futures contract prices? Spot price plus spot into risk-free rate of return minus dividend yield into the tenure. So we are having this 2400. We don't have what is current spot price of Nifty, so we use X, then plus X plus 9 minus 6 into 4 by 12, which is my tenure. So we will get our current future, market price of Nifty to be 2376.24. Okay, then the maximum contango and backwardation. So here we need to revise the concept. If my current market price is X, for example, and future trading is on X plus 10, For example, in our situation, if the spot was 2400 for Nifty and future is trading at 2450, so it would be contango. And reverse situation, if current market price is X and future price is X minus 10, so it is called backwardation. For example, in our current situation, the Nifty was trading at 2376.24, whereas our future was trading at 2400. Alright, so it is called contango. Just because future is expecting Nifty to be on higher side, so it is contango, and if future is expecting Nifty to be on lower side, it is called backwardation. So in our answer is contango. Then the payoff of the transaction at the end. So upside we were given somewhere that the Nifty is closing on May is 2100. So what is his transactions summary to be? He sold future at 2400. Okay, and the spot price in May turns out to be 2100, so he'll have to buy at 2100. So 2100 minus 2400, 300 rupees would be his gain over the contract. So that only 2400 minus 2100 into 5 contracts into 75 units of units in each contract, so it would be 1,12,500 gain. So just to summarize this question, what was the summary of the transaction? He sold a future at 2400, which he bought back on at the time of settlement at 2100. So 300 rupees per contract was his gain. Alright. Then 7th question is for a rice trader. Rice trader has planned to sell 22,000 kgs of rice after 3 months from now. The spot price of the rice is 60 rupees per kg. So what he is having? He is having 2200. He might be having 22,000 kgs of rice, which he is expecting to be sold today for 60 rupees per kg. Alright, and 3 months future on the same is trading at 59 rupees per kg. So it is backwardation. In last question only we revised the concept. If spot is trading, future is trading below spot price, it is called backwardation. So the price is expected to fall as low as 56 rupees per kg 3 months in. So he will be concerned that what if the price of the rice goes to 56, he will have to bear a loss. So what he will do is, in current spot market he is holding rice 22,000 kgs, so to hedge the same, he will have to take opposite position in future market. So first question is that only to interpret the position of trader in cash market. So currently he is long on rice. Okay, so he is long on rice just because he might be having rice. That's why he need to hedge its position. To advise trader should take in future market. So what position in future market he should take to mitigate the risk of reduced profits? So always in future market he will have to take the opposite position what he is having into the spot market. So in spot market he is long, so in future market he will be short. He need to take opposite position. Then to demonstrate effect of realized price for its sale, if he decides to make use of future market after 3 months, spot price turns out to be 57 rupees and closing contract is 58 rupees. So the closing rate of contract is 58 rupees. So to mean square of the transaction, he'll have to buy this what he has sold. So the gain in future market will be 59 what he sold minus 58 what he will buy into units. So it will be 22,000 gain in future market, whereas revenue from sale of rice what he is holding is 22,000 kg into 57 is rice spot price. So it would be 12,54,000 would be his cash inflow. So net cash inflow would be 12,54,000 plus 20. Let's start with our 8th question, which is from foreign exchange exposure and risk management chapter. So we are given here codes of 2 banks, different banks, Citibank and Hong Kong Bank. So we need to identify are these codes identical or not. So as we can see that the code given for Citibank is a direct code for JPY, whereas the code given from Hong Kong Bank is a direct code for USD. So these are not identical. Alright, so first answer is done. Then the second is there any possibility for arbitrage? So to check this out, we need to bring both the codes to same direct code. So what we will do is we will keep Citibank code as it is and bring Hong Kong code to direct code of JPY. So for that we need to do 1 divided by selling rate of direct quote for USD. So it will give us buying direct quote for JPY. So and similarly for selling rate also. So and then further we will compare it with Citibank's code. So it comes to 105.525 to 111.11, whereas in comparison to Citibank it's 105 to 106.50. So yes, there arbitrage opportunity exists. Alright, then what is, if arbitrage opportunity exists, then how should you make profit from it? we need to start from JPY 1000 or USD 1000. So both we will do. First we will take USD 1000. If I am having 1000 USD, then I will first go to Hong Kong Bank and get those 1000 USD get converted to JPY. So I will get 107527. How I will get this? Because I got this rate from here when I converted it to direct rate for JPY. Alright, then further this JPY I'll go to Citibank and get it reconverted to USD. So they will reconvert, they will buy from me at 106.50, means their selling rate they will apply. So it will come to 1009.64 USD. So I'll make a arbitrage gain of 9.64 USDs. And whereas if I start from 1 lakh JPY, so first I will go to Citibank and get those 1 lakh JPY get converted to USD. I'll get $938.96. Then further I'll go take those dollars and go to Hong Kong Bank and get it converted to back to JPY. So Hong Kong Bank will charge me this rate. So they will give me 1,964.20 JPY. So I'll make a gain of 964.20 JPY for this transaction. So yes, arbitrage opportunity exists and we will make this much. Now next question is for cross rate conversions. How to evaluate currency rates based on other currency rates. Alright, so let's get here. We have been given 3 cross currency rates. First is yen to USD, second is USD to pound, third is USD to Australian dollars. Alright, so first we need to evaluate for pounds in terms of yen. Alright, so yen to pound we need to convert. So first of all what we will do is we will just write it down over here in this symbol. So how I interpret this is, the second which I write is the commodity. Like if USD yen to USD is there, then for 1 USD I will need to pay 107.31 yens. Similarly for this and this. So here we need to calculate the cross rate for pound in yen terms. So means pound is my commodity, so pound I am writing second and yen I am writing first. So how to evaluate? So first how we will bridge, we need to go from yen here to pound here. So we can go it through USD. So what I will do is yen to USD and USD to yen. Simply multiply the both. We will get yen to pound. Alright, then second we need to calculate cross rate for Australian dollars in yen terms. So here commodity is Australian dollars, so I will write this second and yen is first. So how to go there? From here I need to go to here. So first I'll go to USD, then from USD I'll go to pound, then from USD I'll go directly here. Alright, so USD to yen to USD, USD to Australian dollars. Simply multiply, we'll get the rate. Alright, then third we need to evaluate cross rate for pound in Australian dollar terms. So pound is my commodity and Australian dollars is my start point. So Australian dollar to yen, yen to pound. So these both rates we have calculated in 1 and 2 above. So we'll just put it here and we'll get a third cross rate. Alright, now second question they are asking about is the currency spot exchange is $1.35 per pound. So pound is my commodity, I am writing a second, dollar is this 1.35. 3 months forward rate is going is this 1.30. According to your analysis of the stock exchange rates, you are quite confident that the stock exchange rate will be $1.32 after 3 months. Means I am confident that the dollar exchange rate would be 1.32 and not 1.30, which is prevalent to the forward market. So I can make a gain over here. Like I am sure that 0.02 would be my gain if I buy a forward contract today and sell it after 3 months. So I will make a gain of 0.02 per pound. Okay, so first question they are asking me, suppose we want to speculate in the forward market, then what course of action would be required and what is expected dollar profit loss from this speculation? So my expected dollar profit loss is 0.02 per pound, correct? So how many pound we need to use? We need to use 10 lakh pounds, 1 million pounds. So 1 million into 0.02, so $20,000 I will make a gain. Okay, if we are confident. What would be your profit loss in terms of dollar if spot exchange rate turns out to be 1.26? If my rate turns out to be 1.26, so what I have already done today is I bought a forward contract of 3 months for ahead. So if after 3 months this spot is 1.26, so I will make a loss of 0.04. So my 40,000 would be the loss. 0.04 into 1 million. Alright. Then we come to next question, which is International Financial Management chapter. Suppose you are the treasurer of XYZ PLC. XYZ have two overseas subsidiaries. One is Amsterdam based and one is Switzerland based. The surplus funds in hand is as follows, which it does not need for the next 3 months. Means all the holding company and its two subsidiaries which are placed overseas, all the three companies don't require funds for next 3 months, 90 days. So the question speaks about the investment opportunity, like where should the fund be parked. Means the funds should be parked in their respective domestic markets, or the fund should be repatriated to parent company, and from parent company the investment should be made. Alright, so the spot exchange rates we have been given here. 91 days forward rates are also given. See, if the forward rate is in ascending order, we plus it in the spot rates, and if the forward rate is in descending order, like in this, we minus it from the spot rates. Alright, so this we need to remember just. Then we have been given the interest rates prevailing in money market of respective currencies. Like if in pound I am investing up to 2 lakhs, I will get 1% return. If more than 20 lakhs I am investing in this, then I'll get 3% return. So you have been approached by your banker. See, I am holding company. Alright, so at holding company he is talking, where the above mentioned surplus was lying, requesting you to swap the surplus lying and with other two subsidiaries and place them deposit with them. So what he is asking with the holding company is, you just repatriate the funds to your respective currency now, and for 90 days you park it in our currency itself. So we need to determine minimum interest rate what that banker should be quoting to us, so that this whole transaction becomes beneficial to us. So for that, what we will do is, we will just first evaluate that what would be the interest earning if I park the funds at respective countries itself in their respective currencies, and what would be the earning on them, and then after 3 months on forward rate when I repatriate it to my parent company, what would be my net gain, and I'll compare that net gain with what this banker is offering me. Alright, so let's get started. Chaliye. At holding company we are having this much, at Swiss subsidiary we are having this much, Dutch subsidiary we are having this much. Alright, the exchange rates are this. This I already told you that when the quote is for forward is given into this such, if it is increasing order we plus it, if it is decreasing order we minus it. Alright, if all the money is invested into home currencies. Okay, so when I'll park these funds at their respective home currencies, I'll get this much interest, like 2% in this. Okay, then 0.5% in CHF and 1% in pound itself, based on the amount I am investing. So I'll earn this much interest on that, and my maturity amount will be this. So I would have booked forward rate at today itself for 3 months down the line. So this rate I'll multiply it, and then on maturity I'll be having this much pounds, 20,511.61 pounds. Then what the banker had approached me, that I should repatriate all the funds on today itself. So first of all, on spot rate I'll repatriate it to pound every penny. So I'll get in total 20,173.53 pounds in hand. So that amount I should invest and earn more than this, then only this banker's option would be viable for me. Alright, so we'll compare it with the return I am earning above. So I get this much difference, 20,338.08 pounds, which should be my minimum earnings to justify banker's offer. So in percentage terms, it comes out to be 4.023% minimum rate, which should be demanded from the banker to make this a more viable opportunity for me to earn profits. Now 11th question is for interest rate risk management chapter. So there are two companies, ABC and XYZ, which has approached a bank for forward rate agreement. Okay, so to borrow 1000 crores after 2 years for a period of 1 year. That means in this FRA terms, what we write is 2V3 FRA. Alright, after 2 years I need to borrow for a period of 1 year. Okay, bank has given this rates to XYZ and this rates to ABC. So as you can see, ABC rate of interest is a bit higher just because its credit rating is lower when compared to XYZ. Okay, so first we need to calculate the rate of interest DEF bank would quote under 2V3 FRA using bank's yield information as quoted above. So see, what this denotes is, we are having a interest rate mentioned for 2 years we are having an interest rate mentioned for 3 years. So we need to calculate what is the interest rate for third year, 2v3. Alright, so what we will do is, this is the third year rate of interest into up to 2-year rate of interest equal to total 3 years rate of interest. So 1 plus r into 1 plus 2 years rate of interest raised to 2 equal to 1 plus 3 years rate of interest raised to 3. So we will get 5.04% for XYZ, and similarly when we calculate we will get 6.38% for ABC. So here also you can see ABC's rate of interest for third year is higher just because its credit rating is lower. Then second question they are asking is, suppose bank offers interest rate guarantee at a premium of 0.1% of the amount. So it is like our interest rate bank wants to fix it right now, and whatever will be, if even if 10% interest rate would be prevalent at that point of time, we will have to pay this much only, 5.04 for example, if for XYZ they are quoting. If the interest rate in 2 years turns out to be 4.5% and 5.5%. So first of all we'll check that what would be my premium amount. So as denoted, premium would be 0.1%. So of 100 crores it will be, so I'll have to pay 10 lakhs 1 million premium. Then if rate of interest turns out to be 4.5% after 2 years, then I won't exercise, do not exercise and enjoy lower interest rate. Like I'll enjoy 4.5% interest rate. Why would I exercise the option? And if interest rate turns out to be 5.5 or say hypothetically 10%, then we will exercise and we will pay only 5.04% what was quoted by the bank at the time of interest rate guarantee. So my interest outflow in option number 1 would be 4.5 crores and option number 2 will be 5.04 crores. Then my premium outflow will be 0.1 crores, 0.1 crores. So my net cost will be 4.6 crores if interest rate prevailing is 4.5%, and 5.5 crores, 5.14 crores if my 5.5% interest rate would be prevalent at that point of time. So next question is from corporate valuation. So we have been given information about the company, which is expected to grow at 20% per annum for the next 3 years and will stabilize its growth at 8% per annum from 4th year onwards. Okay, so we have been given estimates of revenue, COGS, operating expenditure, which is inclusive of depreciation, capital expenditure, and so on. So during high profit growth, the revenue estimates and EBITDA will grow at 20% per annum, and capital expenditure net of depreciation will grow at 15%. So this will get for outflow purpose, like capital expenditure. What would we see? Net of depreciation, capital expenditure is 150 over here. It will grow at 15% per annum. Alright, so first year it would be around 172.50. Second year it will go at 15%. Third year it will go at 15%, and then it would be offsetting from depreciation itself. And from 4th year, normal growth rate will grow at 8% per annum incremental capital. During both high growth and normal growth, net working capital requirement will be 25% of revenues. Total weighted average cost of capital is given as 15%. Tax rate will be 30% per annum. Alright, so come, let's solve the question. So first of all, revenue will grow at 20% for first 3 years and then at the rate of 8%. Terminal year means from 4th year onwards. Okay, same is the case with COGS, 20% and then 8%. Then operating expenditure, which would be excluding of depreciation now. So operating expenditure 2250 minus 600, which will that will be grown by 20% each year, and then from by 8%. So is depreciation, we will get EBITDA, earning before interest and tax after depreciation, but then tax at the rate this, then earnings after tax is this much. Then we have been given that capital expenditure will be compensated by depreciation. So my net outflow was 150 here, so which will grow at the rate of 15% per annum. So this will be 172 here, 198 here, and 228 here. So my net working capital requirement increase would be 25% of revenues. So 25% of this would be my working capital requirement. Okay, then I'll get my free cash flows over here. So what I'll do is first 3 years cash flow I'll bring it to present value over here. So with using 15% discount rate we have done. So it is 3676.44. Then terminal cash flow, which is from 4th year onwards to infinity, it is this much. So that will bring first to 3rd year, and then from that cash flow we will bring to 1st year. So what we have done is 2680.13 divided by yield minus growth rate. So So 0.15 minus 0.08, so 0.07, it will come to around 38,287.57 crores, which will further bring it to zeroth here, like present value. So it will come to around 25,174.08 crores. So my total firm's value will come to 28,850.52 crores. Next question is for mergers and acquisition chapter considering corporate restructuring. So we have been given a balance sheet of a company which comprises of equity share capital 600, debentures, preference shares 200, debentures 200, debenture interest accrued on this above liabilities 26 rupees, loan from bank 74, creditors 340, land and building, plant and machinery, furniture, fixture, inventory, debtors, cash balance, preliminary expenses, cost of issue of debentures, and P&L account. So we are having a not so good balance sheet, like it is visible that the company's financial position is not so good. The company did not perform well, also written over here, and has suffered sizable losses during the last few years. We can see here at 525 was the debit balance of P&L reserves. However, it is felt that the company would be nursed back to health by proper financial restructuring. We need to perform a financial restructuring over this, and the terms of financial restructuring are mentioned over here. Okay, so first is equity share capital to be reduced by 25 rupees per share. Okay, so equity share capital which was 100 rupees per share will be reduced to 25 rupees per share, means 75 into number of shares would be my gain on restructuring. Then preference shares to be reduced with coupon rate of 10% to equal number of shares of 50 rupees each. So preference shares are also taking a hit of 50% each. Debenture holders have agreed to forego their interest, so the interest payable to debenture holders will also be foregone and interest rate will be reduced to 9%. The creditors have agreed to forego 25% of their liability. Company has issued 6 lakh equity shares at 25 each, and entire sum was paid on the application, means all subscription proceeds has been received by the company. Land and building was revalued at 450 lakhs, which is currently standing at 200 lakhs, so 250 gain over there. Plant and machinery was written down by 120 lakhs, so it is like impairment, so it is a loss. Provision of 15 lakhs has to be made on doubtful debt, so more 15 lakhs will be the loss. Impact on financial restructuring on the company's activities. So let's look. First of all, equity share capital was reduced by 75 rupees per share, so 450 was the gain over there. Then reduction in preference shares was 50 rupees per share. So 2 lakh preference shares we had, 50 rupees per share, so 100 was the gain over there. Then waiver of debenture interest, so 26 was the debenture interest, so that is also a gain. Then waiver of creditors up to 25%, so 340 for 25% would be 85 rupees, so 661 is the total gain. Then I was having a gain on revaluation of land and building up to 450 lakhs, so this was 250 lakhs was the gain over here, so total 911 was the gain. Then what I have done from this is, we will first of all write off the P&L account balances. So 525 P&L account balance will be written off. Then cost of issue of debentures would be taken care of. Then preliminary expenses will also be taken care of. Then we were having 15 rupees of provision to be made for bad and doubtful debts. So 15 rupees provision. 120 lakhs was the impairment of plant and machinery, so it will also be done. So total 675 lakhs is the effect given. So my remaining capital reserve gain, which is remaining after this restructuring plan, will be 236 lakhs. So after giving impact of all these, then too I am having 236 lakhs of more capital reserve with me. Alright, so then prepare the fresh balance sheet. We need to prepare a balance sheet again. So capital would be, my total capital was reduced. See, my starting capital was 600, reduced by 450, and additional capital was issued. So my total capital comes out to be 300. Then preference shares, then capital reserve, this balance is carry forward over here. Then debentures, then loan from bank, then creditors, then new value of land and building, then impaired value of plant and machinery, furniture, fixtures, inventory, debtors, after giving impact of provision for doubtful debts, and cash equivalent. Let's start with the theory portion. Now the first question is, explain key decisions that fall within the scope of financial strategies. So there are total 4 decisions which fall within the scope of financial strategies. That is, first is financing decision, which deals with mode of financing, that is equity or capital. Second is investment decisions, which deal with profit utilization of firm's fund for long-term projects, like where the firm should invest and which involves minimum risk. Dividend decisions, that whether the earnings should be distributed amongst the shareholders or it should be reinvested into the company. Portfolio decisions, evaluation of contribution to aggregate performance of the entire corporation rather than individual basis, isolated basis. Next question is, what is financial risk? So financial risk is an unexpected change in financial conditions like price change, exchange rate change, rating change, interest rate change, and so political risk is not directly in direct sense and financial risk, but an unexpected political change in any country may lead to country's risk resulting to financial loss to an entity. So financial risk can be from when we can review financial risk from different stakeholders point of view. So first stakeholders point of view is from major stakeholders like equity shareholders and everything. So for them, financial gearing, that is ratio of capital between debt and equity, can be of significant importance. Like just because in case of winding up, they will be the least prioritized person when the assets of the companies are being liquidated and distributed amongst the shareholders. Even for lenders, high capital gearing ratio is sometimes risky just because payment default rate increases. Then from company's point of view, when they borrow excessively, it can be forced into liquidation. Then from government's point of view, when any bank fails or any financial institution fails, it can create distrust among society at large and can result into sovereign debt crisis, which is very bad for an economy. Then the third question is, explain various market indicators, like what are the market indicators present. So first is breadth index. It is index that covers all securities traded. How it is being computed? It is computed by dividing the net advances or declines in the market by number of issued securities traded on them. Alright, so if it supports the movement of Dow Jones averages, then it is considered to be of technical strength. And if it does not support the movement of Dow Jones averages, then it is considered to be a technical weakness. Then second is volume of transactions. It is a useful clue how market would behave in near future. Like increasing volume would signal a buy behavior, whereas a falling market with an increasing volume signals a bear market. A rising market with decreasing volume indicates a bull market, while falling market with a dwindling volume indicates a bear market. So these are a few indicators. Then confidence index, how willing the investors are to take a chance in the market. This is being measured by confidence index. A rising confidence index is expected to precede the rising stock market, and a fall in the index is expected to precede a drop in stock prices. This is an indicator of market. It should be used in conjunction with other market indicators also. Then relative strength analysis. Prices of some securities are relatively faster in bull market and or decline more slowly in bear market than other securities. For example, if Sensex is rising 10%, then these securities will rise 15%. But when Sensex will fall 10%, these securities will fall only 5%. So this is relative strength. Then the odd lot theory. This is in contrary opinion theory, which says that average person is usually wrong. The odd lot theory is used primarily to predict tops in bull market and also to predict reversals in individual securities. Okay, then next question is, discuss briefly about the problems faced in growth of securitization in instruments in context of India. So in India, what are the issues being faced in securitization markets? Okay, so main problems faced. First is stamp duty, which is at many times these instruments get taxed up to 12%. Many states have exempted this, but still it is a concern. Then taxation aspect, other income tax matters and everything. We need to look into this. Then accounting, no prescribed accounting is specified for debt such securitized instruments. This is another area of concern. But in true sense, many times receivables are removed from originator's balance sheet. Problem arises especially when assets are transferred without any recourse terms. Lack of standardization means everybody gets into the contract as per their convenience. Every originator follow his own format of documentation and administration. Inadequate debt markets in India. Ineffective foreclosure laws, not supportive to lending institutions, especially less attractive as lenders face difficulty in transfer of property in the event of default by borrowers. Next question is, explain the methods in which startup firm can bootstrap. So what is the meaning of bootstrap? How it can effectively manage its capital and its financial requirements. All right. So first is to trade credits. So it can ask their suppliers to give them enhanced trade credits, or in which what communication skills roles will they play. They need to explain their financial plan to the CFO of the supplier entities, explain about their business, first order on credit, to get goods shipped and sell them before paying them off, means to arrange for recoveries before their payments are due. For working capital needs to be managed, especially in retail operations. Then factoring, like they can use discounting as a model, like where accounts receivable of a business organization is sold to a commercial finance company to raise capital. Like they can ask bank to discount their receivables, debtors and everything. Leasing out method of this is the best method of bootstrapping. Lease rather than purchasing, it will avoid lump sum payments out of their pockets at initial stage. So let's come to forward and future contracts. Alright, so forward contracts are normally personal basis, where future contracts are competitive arenas. Means it is like future contracts are always traded through exchanges like stock exchange and everything, whereas forward can be done between two parties on personal basis. The size of the contract is individually tailored. Here it is standardized. Organized exchanges, here it is over the counter market, here it is organized stock exchange routed. Settlement, here it is done on agreed upon dates, and here it is done daily by clearing houses. Delivery date agreed upon and in terms of actual delivery, whereas here no actual delivery is done and only settlement is done on the fixed date. Transaction cost, bid ask spread is there over here, but here brokerage fee and everything plays a key role in determining the transaction cost. Marking to market, here there is no requirement to do mark to market M2M on daily basis, but whereas in futures M2M is done on daily basis. Margin requirement is not there in forwards, whereas in futures margin is prescribed by stock exchanges. Credit risk is borne by each party, and they need to bother about the credit worthiness of the counterparty also. But whereas in future they don't need to bother about the credit worthiness of the counterparty, it is on exchange, so they don't need to take the responsibility on themselves. This was our RTP discussion for the attempt November 2020. Hope it gets helpful to you in your examination. Don't panic in exam at all. You can also score 80 plus easily in strategic financial management. Stay safe, stay confident, and rock in exam. Stay tuned for my upcoming lectures on strategic financial management. Thank you. Best of luck.